when you're that person, that entrepreneur, that salesperson who can take your focus off yourself and place it on serving others, on discovering what the other person needs, wants, and desires, on helping others to solve and overcome their challenges and problems. When you can take your focus off yourself and place it on helping to bring other people closer to happiness, if you will, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to refer business to you. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassador.
Hey, what's up, Masters? Welcome to another episode of Path to Mastery. Today, we have the privilege of being with Mr. Bob Burg. Bob, what's going on, sir?
Hey, David, great to be with you.
Yeah, it's great to have you. You know, it's funny. I was telling you earlier before we started recording, as we were goofing around trying to get set up in Clubhouse here. I was in Gary Keller's mastermind in like 2015 and 16, and he had your book as a must read. For everybody, you know, in sales, and it's pretty cool.
Well, you know? I feel the same way about his books. He's terrific.
Why do you think Gary Keller, at the time, probably the largest real estate company in the world, would have all his salespeople having your book as a must read?
Well, I mean, I think Gary's philosophy about business is very similar in that he's very focused on the people he leads. He's very focused on serving his customers and clients. And really the go-giver, the basic premise is simply that shifting your focus from getting to giving. And when we say giving in this context, we simply mean constantly and consistently providing immense value to others, understanding that doing so is not only a more pleasant way of conducting business, it's actually the most financially profitable way as well. You know, that's really, I think, much of Gary's philosophy based on what I know of him and from his books that I've read. Interesting, though, is when we look at, you know, the shift from getting to giving and why that's so profitable, I think it's really important to understand that there's nothing about that is woo-woo or, you know, way out there or magical or mystical in any way. It actually makes very rational sense when you think about it, because entrepreneur, that salesperson who can take your focus off yourself and place it on serving others, on discovering what the other person needs, wants, and desires, on helping others to solve and overcome their challenges and problems. When you can take your focus off yourself and place it on helping to bring other people closer to happiness, if you will, people feel good about you. People want to get to know you. They like you. They trust you. They want to be in relationship with you. They want to do business with you. They want to refer business to you. They want to be what we call your personal walking ambassador. Of sense. You know, it's interesting too, if we can really put ourselves in the shoes of the other person. And I often say this when I speak to sales groups, sales organizations, that nobody's going to buy from you because you have a quota to meet. They're not going to buy from you because you need the money or because you'd like the sale to happen, or even because you're a really nice human being. They're going to buy from you because they believe they will be better off by doing so than by not doing so. And that's fine. That's the only reason anyone should buy from you or from me or from anyone else. So, but this is actually very advantageous to the salesperson, because that salesperson who can, again, place their focus squarely upon that other person, discovering what they want, what they need, what they desire. That's the person who creates that context for the sale to take place. Because let's face it, this prospective customer or client has a lot more faith in you, a lot more trust in you when they know that your goal is to please them, to offer them immense value. So by focusing on the other person, we take the focus off ourselves and we take the fear away, because it's not about us. It's about them.
Yeah. Amen. So we are, just for people that are just popping in or just listening to our podcast, I'm with Mr. Bob Burg. He wrote the book, The Go Giver. And We're also streaming live into Clubhouse. So if people in Clubhouse would be interested in asking any questions, we'd love to just raise your hand. I'll keep my eyes on the phone as well. And I just want to tell you a little bit about Bob for people who don't know who he is. He's the co-author of the international bestseller, The Go-Giver, and a much sought after speaker at sales and leadership conferences. He is committed to inspiring the entrepreneurial spirit in all of us. He shows that companies, both large and small, that conduct their business the Go-Giver way are not only of much greater value to their customers, they are also significantly more functional and profitable as well. And some of the things that we're going to talk about today is I'd love to touch on those 5 laws that bring you both personal effectiveness and professional success, as well as, man, I want to talk about, I was looking at this earlier. Something really stood out to me. Well, let's start there. Why don't you give us first the premise of the book, and then I'd like to talk about the 5 laws.
So the premise is that shift in focus. It's moving off of yourself and onto them. And then there are the 5 laws that are attached to that. And those laws are the laws of value, compensation, influence, authenticity, and receptivity. The first law, the law of value, says your true worth, in the business sense, of course, your true worth is determined by how much more you give in value than you take in payment, which when you first hear that sounds a little counterintuitive, almost counterproductive, because give more in value than I take in payment. How am I supposed to stay in business? How am I supposed to survive? Never mind thrive if I do that, right? And so we simply have to understand the difference between price and value. Price is a dollar figure. It's a dollar amount. It's finite. It is what it is. Value, on the other hand, is the relative worth or desirability of a thing, of something, to the end user or beholder. In other words, what is it about this thing, this product, service, concept, idea, what have you, that brings so much worth or value to another human being that they will willingly exchange their money for it and be glad they did, while you make a very healthy profit. In the story, in The Go-Giver, we looked at Iafrate's Italian restaurant, and it was a high-end restaurant. When you eat there, you're probably going to pay a pretty penny to do so. But you come away from the experience, because not only the food, which was great, but the presentation, the wait staff, the way you were greeted, the ambiance, everything about that place provided such an immense buying experience that regardless of how much the bill was, you felt great about it. You came away feeling like you received much more than what you paid. You received more in value than what you paid. Meanwhile, Mr. Iafrate, the restaurant owner, certainly his cost of goods sold was significantly less than what he sold it for, along with his staff and the place itself and everything else. So he made a very, very healthy profit as well. So really, in any free market-based exchange, and when I say free market, I simply mean no one is forced to do business with anyone else. People do so on their own volition. In any market-based exchange, there should always be at least 2 profits: the buyer profits and the seller profits, because each of them come away significantly better off afterwards than they did before. So that's a brief look at the law of value. There's much more to it, because it's, we also need to be able to separate and distinguish ourselves from everyone else who has a product or service that might even be similar to ours.
So you get the law of value, and then the second one is which one?
The law of compensation. And this one says your income is determined by how many people you serve and how well you serve them. So where law number 1 says to give more in value than you take in payment, law number 2 tells us that the more people whose lives you touch with the exceptional value you provide, the more money with which you'll be rewarded. In this part of the story, Nicole Martin, the CEO, tells Joe, the protege, that law number 1, the law of value, represents your potential income, but it's not enough, certainly, to provide value to just one person, regardless of how good that is. So law number 2, the law of compensation, is your actual income, because it represents your impact, how many lives you impact with that exceptional value. Law number 3 is the law of influence. And this one says your influence is determined by how abundantly you place other people's interests first. Again, it sounds counterproductive when you first hear it, maybe even Pollyanna. But first, when you think about it, the greatest leaders, top influencers, the highest money producing salespeople, this is simply how they run their lives and conduct their businesses. They're always looking out for the other person's interest. But it's also important, I think, David, to clarify and qualify the statement, because it can be easily misunderstood. And I think this is important. When we say place the other person's interests first, I don't mean that you should be anyone's doormat or a martyr or self-sacrificial in any way. Absolutely not at all. It simply is Joe, the protege in the story, learned from several of the mentors. The golden rule of business, of sales, is simply that all things being equal, people will do business with and refer business to those people they know, like, and trust. And there's no faster, more powerful, or more effective way to elicit those feelings toward you and others than by genuinely moving from what we call an I focus or me focus to an other focus, looking for ways to, as Sam, one of the mentors, advised Joe, make your win all about the other person's win.
I do want to touch on what you said, though, about not being a doormat, because that, to me, that's about me. It has to be a win-win. And that's why we don't do business with everybody that we come in contact, right? Not everybody's the right client for everybody listening.
That's right. Very true.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And then I was recently reading a book, and he said that something I hadn't heard, but it makes sense, is if when you like people, people like you, or people like people who like them.
Sure. It's very difficult to not like someone who likes you. Not that it can't happen, but it usually doesn't.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I mean, I know the one that says, well, people like people who like them, but this is the first time I heard people like people who like them, which means, because sometimes, without really being aware of it, maybe we don't like somebody, or not that we don't like them, but I'm not a fan of somebody, but yet I'm trying to get something from them, and they probably can sense that, right?
Yeah. Well, and it's not even that you're trying to get something from them. You're in a relationship with them where you're trying to bring them some immense value. But if there's something about them that, either that bothers you on some level or what have you, then it's difficult really to communicate in a way that causes them to really feel good about you. So yeah, I think you make a great point.
I like how you picked up on to get something from them too, because that's not the language we're talking about today on the Go Giver, right? Like, what can we do to bring some value to them? But sometimes, it's a product, it's something they have, a service,
sure,
or a way that, we can help them and they can help us in return. So, all right. So what's the fourth one, Bob?
The fourth one's the law of authenticity. And this one says the most valuable gift you have to offer is yourself. And in this part of the story, Deborah, who was the mentor here, she shared a really important lesson, and that is that all the skills in the world, the sales skills, technical skills, people skills, as important as they all are, and they are all indeed very, very important, they're also all for naught if you don't come at it from your true, authentic core. But when you do, when you show up as yourself day after day, week after week, month after month, people feel good about you. People feel comfortable with you. People feel safe with you. And why wouldn't they? They know who they're getting. And this is very important. Consistency is key in terms of building and maintaining trust. As human beings, we want to believe we are consistent, but we demand it of other people if we are going to trust them. So consistency is a big part of authenticity. Now, I think what happens is sometimes people misunderstand the essence of authenticity, and they see it as not having any boundaries, right? Or not having any filters, right? This is just who I am, and take it or leave it, right? And which I guess is a good philosophy if you don't want to have any good relationships or be particularly successful in business. But since that's not what most of us want, I'd say that's not a productive philosophy. No, that would be like the person who says, well, I have anger issues and I yell at people a lot. And if I were to act any differently, that wouldn't be authentic of me. And of course, that's baloney. That's malarkey. It simply means this person has an authentic problem that person needs to authentically work on in order to improve themselves and become a better, more effective, authentic version of themselves. So, we would say don't use authenticity as an excuse to not grow or do things that are counterproductive. Use it as impetus to step into the highest level of who you are. Really, when you think about it, authenticity is simply acting congruently with your values.
Yeah, you can be an authentic jerk, right? And
sure, absolutely.
Yeah,
we don't recommend it, but you
nobody
certainly
likes you. Yeah, 100%. All right, and then the fifth one. What's the fifth one?
That's the law of receptivity. And the law of receptivity says the key to effective giving is to stay open to receiving. And really what this means is that, while we breathe out, we also have to breathe in. It's not one or the other. You breathe out carbon dioxide, you breathe in oxygen. You breathe out, which is giving. You breathe in, which is receiving. Giving and receiving are not opposite concepts, despite the message that we get from the world around us, pretty much, from the time of birth, upbringing, environment, schooling, news media, television shows, movies. Think about all the negative messages that are received about money, prosperity, abundance, business. It's just kind of an amazing thing. It's no wonder why so many people have a hard time accepting the abundance coming to them, which is really their birthright. So you can create tons of value for the marketplace, but if you really feel on an unconscious level that money is some kind of evil thing, or that only wealthy people or only dishonest people are wealthy, or all sorts of mind games, mind tricks that we get from the world around us, it's going to be very difficult to allow ourselves to receive. So it's important to understand that giving and receiving are not opposite concepts. Giving and receiving are simply two sides of the very same coin, and they work in tandem. It's not an either or. You're not a giver or a receiver. You're a giver and a receiver. Now, what we also know is that the laws of life, the laws of nature, the laws of economics tell us that the giving comes first. We plant before we harvest. We sow before we reap. We give before we receive. As Pindar, the main mentor in the story, explained to Joe, some people go up to a fireplace and say, first, you give me some fire and some heat, and then I'll throw on some logs and some newspaper and light a match. Well, it doesn't work that way. You wouldn't go into a bank and say to the teller, hey, I want to open an account, but first you give me an interest payment and then I'll open it, make a deposit. Doesn't work that. Life doesn't work that way. And successful people acknowledge the truth. They deal in truths. Now, they don't get stuck on truths. They utilize those truths. They work within those truths in order to propel themselves and others forward. But it's understanding that giving is first. That's why John David Mann and I say that money is simply an echo of value. It's the thunder to value's lightning, which means if you focus on the giving, right? The giving comes first. The value that you're giving comes first. The money you receive is then simply a natural result of the value you've provided.
Yeah, it seems like that's probably an area a lot of people struggle to. Maybe they're not providing the amount of value, and they're not receiving, right? They're not sowing or planting, and that's why they're not receiving, because they're not providing the value.
Well, if that's the case, if that's the case though, David, that's fine, because we can do something about that. You can do something about that. You find a way to provide more value to more people. The challenge is when you are providing a lot of value to a lot of people, but then you're blocking the flow by not allowing yourself to receive. And that's why I'm a big believer that prosperity needs to be proactively studied.
So what is that? What does that mean though, when you're blocking the flow for people listening? Like, describe that.
It means something in your unconscious is telling you it's not good or it's not righteous to receive, or that you're not worthy of receiving, right? And so that's why that must be acknowledged. The person needs to acknowledge that before they're going to open up and let that receptivity flow in. And that's why I'm a big believer in making a proactive study of prosperity. People like, Randy Gage and Bob Proctor, Sharon Lechter, Ellen Rogan, David Nagel, Ken Honda, and there's so many others who do such a wonderful job of writing and speaking and blogging and podcasting about prosperity and prosperity mindset. And I got to tell you, 99.9% of what they discuss is all about letting go of the blocks to your prosperity. Great book about this, really, and published in 1960 was Psycho-Cybernetics by Dr. Maxwell Maltz, which was the first book I ever read on belief systems and how our beliefs are subjective truths, right? How we see the world as working, our model of the world, how that affects everything we do, and how much success we will allow ourselves to have.
Yeah. Well, so we've got some people, Bob, filling up here in the clubhouse room, which I'm glad we did this. My buddy Alpha popped in. I'm hoping that they can. Alpha, can you hear us? Do you want to?
Oh, yeah, I hear you just.
Okay, perfect. Good. So, so I think we have a few questions for Bob. We'll let Alpha, can you kind of help manage this for me? And do you have a question? And then maybe we could get a few more questions for Bob.
Hi, Alpha.
Hey, what's going on, Bob? I spoke to you a while ago about this law number 5. And I went back and told my mother about it. She really appreciated it because, for a long time, she's a great, great giver. However, she is not a great receiver. And I, too, have learned to be a greater receiver because of your book.
Oh, thank you.
So
please tell your mom I said hi.
I will, and she would be so excited. As a matter of fact, I'm going to send her a copy of your actual book because she hasn't read the book herself yet. And buy a new copy for myself because, sometimes you read the book the first time and you get things that you, at that level of consciousness, but later you see things you didn't see before. Sure.
Every time I read a book again, I learn something new, and I know it's not the book that has changed since I last read it.
Yeah, I love that.
Yes, sir. So my question
That's a good one.
Is, at what point do you feel like, or is there a point where you've given too much? Is it possible to give too much as far as the go-giver way of life?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I don't think it's that you can give too much. I think it's that you can give inappropriately or not to the right person. Let me explain what I mean. There are people who will say, and this is actually on 2 levels. So let's explore them both. And one, it's, the person who says, well, I give and I give and I give, but, I don't receive. And a lot of times, again, that goes back to they're not allowing themselves to receive. And then we have to ask, why not? What is it, that you're thinking of, probably unconsciously, so you don't even know necessarily that you're thinking that is blocking that flow, that is keeping you from receiving. And again, there are many reasons. It may have been what you've learned about money or prosperity, or you were told in the messages you received were that, hardworking, honest people were poor and struggling and always taken advantage of by rich people. So internally, unconsciously, you didn't want to be one of those people or it might be that a person was told that they weren't good enough or somehow came to believe they weren't good enough to receive. And then there are other people who don't receive because their payoff, right, is, well, they're a martyr, and they have a payoff as being seen as that martyr, as that person who just gives and does everything for everyone, but is always suffering. And that, again, there's a payoff to that for certain people. Okay. So we've always got to look at when someone does not allow themselves to receive. It's the same with, someone says they're being taken advantage of. Well, if you're being taken advantage of, it's not because you're good person or a giving person. It's because you're doing things in a certain way that create the environment for people to take advantage of you. Again, we got to ask, well, why? What? Because remember, the only one involved in every one of those circumstances where you're being taken advantage of is you. So then we got to ask, well, why is that? What am I doing? What's my payoff for that? What is my thought process? Which is why it's always important to question our premises and try to go past the surface. Now, let me go now a little bit more specific to where you said, can you give too much? There are people, okay, who we call go takers. They're not go givers who look to bring value to others. They're not go getters who are just good, take action type of people. We love go getters, people of action, and go givers, people who are always providing value to others. A go taker is someone who they just want to take without having added value to anyone else, right? And if we're dealing with a go taker, then the chances are we probably are giving them inappropriate value and basically rewarding them for being a taker. So, again, we need, it's not that we don't do business necessarily with a go taker, because not everyone's like us. People are going to do business. Some people are going to just try to get the most from you for the least. That's just how people are. So you continue to be a go-giver, but that's not to be confused with being naive or letting yourself being taken advantage of. It means you're still going to do your best to provide value to that person, immense value to that person, but you're not going to put yourself in a position where you're going to be taken advantage of, where you're going to be giving value to them that they really shouldn't receive, that's outside the scope and so forth. So that's a matter of using your own judgment. But that's where I'd say it's not a matter of giving too much value. I don't think you can ever do that, but I think it's giving value inappropriately when it's not productive.
Yeah. Great answer, Alpha. Great question. By the way, I want to let everybody know you are in the Path to Mastery Club on Clubhouse. You're also listening to Path to Mastery podcast. So going forward, we're going to be doing more interviews like this and streaming them into Clubhouse. So please follow the club if you would. And we've got some really awesome additional guests coming up, just like Bob. We've got about 10 more minutes with Bob. Does that work for you, Bob? 10 minutes?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, awesome. So I know, Barb, you were the first one in here. So I don't know, do you have a question for Barb? I want to see. I'm sorry. Do you have a question for Bob? Barb, well, I just want to make sure I get to you if you have a question, because I think you were the first one on the stage.
I didn't have a specific question, but I've read The Go-Giver multiple times and I love that. And you know what I haven't heard before? The go-taker, and I have been cutting those people out of my life. So I love that coined phrase. So I'm excited about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Barb. I appreciate you. Barb and I have been connected on Clubhouse for quite a while now, I think.
Yeah, there are quite a few go takers out there. I meet them every.
Well, there are. It's a big world,
Yeah.
and again, there's nothing about being a go giver that's congruent with being taken advantage of, with being a doormat or a martyr. Nothing at all. It simply means your focus is on providing immense value to others.
I have a question, and I'd like to get a couple more questions too. So if you have a question, give us a mic flash, please. What would you say when people read the title of the book, The Go-Giver? What's the biggest misconception?
That's a great question, because there are misconceptions. One of them is just that you just give yourself away, right? Mm-hmm. And of course, that's not what it's about at all. Also, that you're a go-giver, you don't care about making a profit. No, of course you do. In fact, a go-giver tends to make a much bigger profit than most others, because a go-giver is always selling on high value, not low price. So typically a go-giver business person is at the upper end of the price scale. So, I think those are kind of the misperceptions, if you will.
Yeah, that you're not so concerned about the profitability and things like that. It's just about giving and giving and giving, and
right, and
much in return.
Of course, and profit's a very important part of business. It just can't be your focus. See, if it's your focus, you're kind of facing the opposite direction, because remember, again, no one's buying from you so that you can make a profit. They're buying from you so they can benefit. Okay. Basically, so that they can profit. That's why they're buying from you. Your profit is a result of their profit. So that's why, again, money is an echo of value. So the focus cannot be on the money. The focus needs to be on the value you're providing another human being. The result is the money, is the profit.
Yeah. I mean, I could just go on with questions all day, but I want to see, does anybody else have any question? Does anybody else have a question for Bob? Just give us a mic flash.
I see there's a hand right. There's Jan. Hello.
Thanks, Elle. Yeah, Jan.
Jan.
Is flashing.
Yes.
What's up, Jan?
Yes. Hi. Good morning, David. Thank you so much for having this room. I've listened to Bob in the other rooms. Thank you so much for sharing. I was kind of chiming in and came into the room a little bit late. But the question I had from last time was the concept of go-giver. And I remember when I read your book a while back, you had explained it. But can you explain one more time how to differentiate between just giving like a go-giver who's successfully achieving the goal rather than a go-giver who's just doing favors for people all the time and basically just gets frustrated. So
okay. Well, thank you, Jan. That's a great question. Basically, one is a giver and one's a go-giver. What's the difference? Well, a giver is just someone who gives. And again, that's a great thing, but it is what it is. You're giving, and that's fine. A go-giver is someone who understands that, that again, that shift in focus by focusing on providing immense value to others, they're creating that what we call benevolent context for success, for people to know them, like them, trust them, want to do business with them, want to refer them to others. So in this case, when we talk about being a go-giver, there is a purpose. You are probably an entrepreneur, salesperson, or a person within a corporation who's providing value to others. You only in this case, your customers, your coworkers, your supervisor, your employer, what have you. But either way, you're providing value to the marketplace in a way that you will be financially rewarded and profitable. Does that answer your question?
Absolutely. Thank you so much. And then just a follow-up question on that, if there's still time, I wanted to ask then, how would you create that perception in the eyes of the beholder, in the eyes of the customer? Let's say I'm in real estate space and I have this client that just calls me whenever he needs a favor, and then he goes and chooses another agent for when he wants to sell his house. So how would I translate or emphasize and highlight that image as I'm a go-giver rather than just a giver?
That's a good question.
Yeah, well, yeah. So in that person's eyes, they're not going to know necessarily the difference in terms. So the question seems to be, why is this person calling me for real estate advice, but then using someone else to list or sell their home? Is that correct?
Does that come down to expectations though, Bob? Do you think like the expectations that were set? Maybe me as the realtor have never really set those expectations. That's what I would want you to do when you're ready to buy a house, not just come to me for advice.
Oh yeah, I mean, they need to know that this is what you do as a professional, and that's fine. And but what I would do is, but to me, it would seem as though that kind of should have been obvious. You've got realtor after your name, so I would talk to this person for two reasons. One, it's going to kind of help you see where you didn't communicate effectively that this is what you do. Okay. And it's also going to help you with others so that you don't make the same mistake. And just to let them know that, I always appreciate speaking with you, and I'm glad to be able to help you with real estate questions. I have noticed a couple of times now that while you ask me for informational questions, when it's time to buy or sell your home, you use someone else's services. If I may ask, is there a reason why that's the case as opposed to you utilizing my services? Well, that person's answer is going to now show you what the challenge is. And so you need to, to be able to make it clear, with those with whom you work, that you are a realtor, a professional real estate agent, and this is what you do.
I love it. And I can relate to Jan's question, being in real estate space. He's on the phone now, so I don't know if you heard the answer, but I think, yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, David. Yes, but go.
My pleasure.
Awesome. I see L flashing, and then we're gonna start wrapping up. By the way, you guys can listen to the full podcast if you go to Path to Mastery podcast. It's on iTunes, anywhere you listen to your podcasts. So this episode will be out in probably a few weeks. So keep your eyes on the podcast. If you please subscribe, also subscribe to this club, because we're going to continue doing this going forward. And we do at least one episode a week, and some weeks we do two. So awesome. I see El Michelle flashing.
Absolutely. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Bob Burg.
Wow. No wonder why you're a professional voiceover artist. You have a wonderful voice.
Thank you so much. I don't have a question. I have a thank you. This is why. Because the whole idea of people laughing when they figure out the secret is giving, right? I would get so much ridicule for being a giver, right? And I was like, well, what's wrong with this? What's wrong with this method? And all I knew was I grew up hearing, you reap what you sow. You reap what you sow. And it depends on the ground you're getting it, sowing it on sometimes. Sometimes it's like the bad ground, stony ground, all these different things. But I just kept moving in that vein. Now, I have to admit that as I matured, I had to learn who to give to and when to push pause.
That's right.
And so thank you. And so I just wanted to say thank you for this, because of this book, The Go-Giver, a little story about powerful business ideas. Because of this, I know people like me are okay.
Thank you. That is so nice of you to say. I got to tell you, one of my favorite stories is from a very, very successful real estate broker who, when she first got into the business, and she would really work with her prospective customers and clients in a way that was very go-giver-ish, right? And this is long before she ever read the book. And her broker actually took her aside and said, "You will never be successful doing this. You need to just go right for the, what have you." And she said, "No, that's just not how I feel comfortable doing things." And she ended up, she read the book, and it just kind of gave her the impetus to know, oh yeah, well, that is the way successful people do things. She went on to have a wonderful real estate career, still does. And and again, these are people who were doing these things and acting this way long before they ever read the book. The book just sort of confirmed, if you will, that what they were doing was the right thing. So I love hearing that, El Michelle. Thank you so much.
Well, no, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you, because you made it okay for all of us.
Thank you, Michelle. All right, listen, I want to just say I appreciate every single person that's come up. Bob and I had planned to do about 30 minutes. We jumped onto Clubhouse. So if we didn't get to your question, Bob, what's the best way for people to connect with you if somebody wants to get your book, or if they just want to connect with something you have going on?
Yeah, the best way is just to go to Burg, and that's BURG.com, where you can get chapter 1 of any of my books. If you scroll down, you can see if you like it. There's also, we have the Go-Giver Success Alliance, which is a mentorship / membership community, which is really a lot of fun. So check that out if you'd like.
Awesome. So in kind of finalizing this whole thing, we talked about a lot today. Like if somebody just chimed in now and said, what would you want them to take from listening to the last 42 minutes with us?
David, I think it comes back to something I learned close to 40 years ago from a guy who saw me as probably saw me as Joe, in the story, right at the beginning, as that kind of up and coming, ambitious, aggressive, not real estate, but just salesperson, and who was really floundering because while I knew sales, I was totally focused on myself and focused on the sale. And I was in a big slump. And he said to me, and he saw that I had potential, which I'm so grateful to this day that he did, because I didn't know him very well. He wasn't even in the sales department. He was in the engineering department of the company. And he said, "Burg, if you want to make a lot of money in sales," he said, "don't have making money as your target. Your target is serving others. Now, when you hit the target," he said, "you'll get a reward, and that reward will come in the form of money, and you can do with that money whatever you choose. But never forget," he said, "the money is simply the reward for hitting the target. It ain't the target itself. Your target is serving others. And that's really when it hit me, David, that great salesmanship is never about the salesperson. Great salesmanship is never about the product or service, as important as those are. That's not what it's about. Great salesmanship is about that other person, about the person whose life you choose to add value to. It's about that person whose life is better just because you are part of it. And I think that when we approach business, when we approach sales from that foundational premise, we're really 9 steps ahead of the game in a 10-step game.
I just want to say I appreciate you, sir. Thank you for doing this. Our friend Mark, 72 Investor, set this up. I've been pinging him in, but he's probably super busy.
He's a great guy.
Yeah, he's a really, really good guy. So again, appreciate your time. Thank you. And yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
Appreciate you. Bye-bye. Bye, everyone.
Yeah, by the way, thank you all on Clubhouse. If I forgot to say that, appreciate you spending some time with us here. We're going to continue doing this. So please follow the club and we will see you guys soon. Thank you.